So your house gets broken into, naturally you ring 999, you wait. A few hours later, you get a reference number, a visit if you're really lucky, and a promise it'll be looked into. Aha. Well, the case is logged, and then in most of Britain, it goes precisely nowhere. No suspect identified, no follow-up, no one comes back to tell you anything, because, well, there's nothing to tell. You are one of millions of people every year whom the police are, in practice, a recording service for rather than a justice service. The crime happened, the paperwork confirms it, the perpetrators elsewhere are entirely undisturbed. Now I want you to imagine that on the same day that your house was broken into, somewhere in England, a lovely, charming police officer drove to someone's home because a person had reported an offensive comment online.
So you've posted something online that we believe is very casual bigotry.
Twitter, Facebook, what?
I can't explain too much.
Not a threat, not a crime. An offensive comment. This is called a non-crime hate incident. It is what it says on the label. It is not a crime. And police forces across England and Wales have been logging them, investigating them, visiting people, spending officer hours on them, while actual crimes are going unsolved at a rate of 9 in 10. In 2024 to 25, there were 9,305 non-crime hate incidents under active investigation across 34 of England and Wales' 48 police forces. More than 133,000 have been recorded since 2014 across all forces. The think tank Policy Exchange estimated, in research cited in the House of Lords in July 2025, that investigating non-crime hate incidents has consumed up to 666,000 hours of police time across all of the forces since this began. 666,000 hours on things that were not crimes. Incidents defined by the government itself as not meeting the threshold for criminal investigation. Logged, referred, attended, investigated, but not crimes. Hey, I'm Andy, this is the fine print, and this is the channel that they would probably rather you had never found, that you never shared, and never told anyone else about. Are you gonna do what they say? Subscribe button's right there. It's a huge help and I really appreciate it. Let us look at what's happening to actual crimes during that same period though, because the contrast, that is the whole point. In the year to March 2025, 90% of all crimes recorded in England and Wales went unsolved. That's 89% of violent and sexual offences going unsolved. Fewer than 3 in every 100 rapes recorded by police resulted in a charge. Not a conviction, a charge. The starting point, the beginning of the process. 97 out of every 100 women who reported a rape to the police in 2024 received no charge, no summons, no day in court, nothing. The Home Office publishes this data. Rape Crisis confirmed the figures in April 2025. It is 2.8%. That means if you are a woman in Britain today and you report being raped, the statistical probability of any legal process following is roughly the same as being selected in a prize draw. Think about what that means for the person who had to decide whether or not to report it at all, who had to walk into a police station to tell a stranger what happened to her, who had to provide evidence and wait and hope, and who then received a reference number and silence. In the year to June 2025, there were 72,804 rapes recorded by police in England and Wales. It was a record high. The proportion of those resulting in a charge, 3.2%, down from 5.5% the previous year, and down from 22.3% in 2014. What has happened in this time? The charge rate for rape has fallen by more than 85% in 11 years. Not because fewer rapes are being committed, because fewer are being investigated and charged. Shoplifting, 529,994 cases in the year to June 2025. That is 3 thefts per minute according to the Office of National Statistics. The Metropolitan Police, the largest police force in the country, charged in fewer than 6% of cases in the year to June 2025. In London, 94 out of every 100 shoplifting cases were closed without a charge. On average, across England and Wales, 793 shoplifting cases went unsolved every single day in 2024 to 25. A Thames Valley Police Commissioner suggested publicly that members of the public should consider challenging shoplifters themselves rather than relying on the police. The public should do the policing because the police are doing something else. The Liberal Democrats called this passing the buck, and I don't think they were wrong. So burglary. 73% of residential burglary investigations in England and Wales were closed in 2024 to 25 without a suspect being identified. The charge rate was 4.7%. If someone breaks into your home in Britain today, the statistical likelihood of them being charged is less than 1 in 20. The Metropolitan Police solved 18% of burglaries. The 82% when unsolved represented 47,050 households in London alone in a single year. Those are 47,050 people who replaced their broken window, called their insurance company, changed their locks, and learned to live with the specific unease that comes from knowing your home was entered and nobody came. The police had been there. The reference number confirmed it, but the case was closed. On to fraud. The most common reported crime in England and Wales, 4.4 million incidents in the year ending December 2025. That is higher than any comparable point since records began. The charge rate for cases that reach police forces is approximately 9%, and most fraud is never reported at all because people assume nothing will happen. I mean, statistically, they're probably right. HM Inspectorate of Constabulary issued a formal warning that just 1% of police officers were assigned to investigate fraud, despite it being the most commonly reported offence in the country. 1% of police officers on the most common crime in Britain. The rest of the force elsewhere. September 1st, 2025, Heathrow Airport. Graham Lynham, the Irish writer who created Father Ted and the IT Crowd, landed from Arizona. 5 armed police officers were waiting for him. He was arrested on suspicion of inciting violence in relation to 3 posts he had made on the social platform X in April, months earlier, while he was in the United States. The posts were just criticisms of transgender activism. There were no named individuals that had been threatened. The post had been online for months, but 5 armed officers met him at an international airport. The case proceeded to Westminster Magistrates Court, where Lynham had faced a separate charge of harassing a transgender activist and damaging her phone. He pleaded not guilty. In October 2025, the Crown Prosecution Service dropped the online incitement case. The police officer in charge of that case, the one built around the X post and the airport arrest, didn't even bother to attend the hearing at which it was dropped. The case that justified 5 armed officers at Heathrow Airport was just not important enough for the investigating officer to bother showing up and attending its own termination. Lynham confirmed in a statement that after a successful hearing to lift bail conditions, the officer in charge didn't attend. The CPS had decided the case, it wasn't worth pursuing. The officer had apparently reached the same conclusion about the hearing. The Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, said in a response to the arrest that police should not be policing toxic culture war debates and that officers had been placed in an impossible position. Yeah, people say dumb shit online all the time. Let them. That is the Commissioner's own assessment of his force's actions in his own force's most recent high-profile case. He said officers were in an impossible position. I mean, yeah, if someone says some dumb shit online, just block them or leave. He then called on the government to change the law rather than examining what his force had been choosing to prioritize. The head of the largest police force in the country acknowledged a systemic problem and pointed somewhere else. Lynham's case is not isolated. In 2025, British police were making more than 30 arrests a day for online communication offences. 30 a day. Since 2014, over 133,000 non-crime hate incidents have been recorded by 43 police forces in England and Wales. The College of Policing's own review on non-crime hate incident recordings, published in December 2025, concluded that police forces had gone too far. Let me know in the comments right now whether you personally would prefer the police force investigate over 100,000 non-crime hate incidents, or whether maybe you'd prefer they investigate 100,000 violent crimes or burglaries. In April 2026, Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood announced that forces would no longer investigate legal but offensive social media posts. And the problem here is what defines offensive, because personally I find boy bands offensive, but hey. Okay, so this was her words. A common sense reform. The fact that it required announcing as a reform tells you everything about what had been happening before it. The Court of Appeal had already ruled in December 2021 that the original non-crime hate incident guidance was unlawful. It described the guidance as creating a chilling effect on the legitimate exercise of freedom of expression. That ruling was in 2021. For 4 more years, the system continued largely as before. The guidance was updated, but the recording continued. The arrests continued. The 666,000 hours continued to accumulate. A court ruling that the system was unlawful didn't stop the system. So there is a question underneath all of this that is not all that complicated. It is not ideological. It does not require taking side in any debate. The question is, what should the police be doing with the hours they have? Because police forces in England and Wales do not have unlimited hours. They are understaffed. Between 2010 and 19, 20,000 police officers were cut from the total across England and Wales. Knife crime rose 45% in the same period, with knife-enabled crimes now at over 53,000 offences a year. The government that made the cuts denied the connection. But since then, some officers have been restored under successive governments. But the total demand on the police has grown faster than the headcount, and fraud alone, with 4.4 million incidents a year, has become the most common reported crime in the country while receiving 1% of officer resources. Every hour spent on something that is not a crime is an hour that could have been spent on the 4.4 million fraud cases, or one of the 72,804 rape cases, or one of the 793 shoplifting cases going unsolved that day. Sir Stephen Watson, the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester, described the non-crime hate incident policy as past its sell-by date in a parliamentary context that was cited in the House of Lords in July 2025. He said that Manchester is safer when his officers are chasing violent muggers rather than egregious tweeters. A chief constable saying this out loud in a parliamentary record, because the situation had become so obviously untenable that even the people inside the system were saying it. The woman whose rape was recorded and then closed without charge does not know that on the same day that her case was quietly filed as unsolved, a police officer somewhere attended her home to discuss an offensive tweet. She does not know because nobody told her. She just knows that she reported it, waited, and eventually heard nothing. That is the experience of the system for most victims of serious crimes in Britain today. The system functions for someone. The question is for whom? Before the close, something worth saying very clearly. None of this is left or right. The data does not care which party is in power. The whole left versus right thing is a distraction to keep you all focused on each other and not the people in power that are actually responsible. The non-crime hate incident framework was introduced following the Macpherson inquiry into the murder of Stephen Lawrence, a recommendation rooted in the genuine and documented failures of British policing towards black victims of serious crime. The intention was not wrong, but the implementation became something that the Court of Appeal called unlawful, that a chief constable called past its sell-by date, and that the Home Secretary of a Labour government announced in April 2026 needed to be scrapped. The framework grew, it became distorted, and it consumed resources in a way that was never the original intention. Labour governments expanded it, then Conservative governments presided over it. The court told them it was unlawful in 2021, but it took until 2026 for reform to arrive. Meanwhile, the charge rate for rape fell from 22% to 3%. The charge rate for shoplifting fell by half. 73% of burglaries were closed without a suspect. Fraud became the most common crime and got 1% of officers' resources. And 666,000 hours were wasted on things that were objectively not crimes. The people who built this system did not set out to fail victims. They did not consciously decide that shoplifting should go unsolved. The outcome was structural. It was produced by funding decisions, prioritization frameworks, guidance documents, and recorded crime targets, none of which were put to you, none of which were voted on, and none of which were visible until journalists, think tanks, parliamentary committees, court judgments, and in this case, a comedy writer's airport arrest forced them into the light. The Court of Appeal told them in 2021 that the non-crime hate incident guidance was unlawful. It took until 2026 for the formal scrapping. 5 years. The 666,000 hours kept accumulating. And this channel exists because someone has to read all the Home Office outcome tables and the Hansard transcripts and the police exchange reports and the rape crisis statistics and the Inspector of Constabulary reviews and come and tell you what they say. Not to frighten you, not to make you feel helpless, because an informed public is a different public than the one the system assumes it's dealing with. The system assumes you won't check, that you will not read that 2.8% figure and sit with what it means for the women who made the decision to report. That you will not know about the 666,000 hours or the 793 daily unsolved cases, or the Court of Appeal ruling that nobody acted on 4 for 4 years. The channel started because the gap between what official language says and what the data shows is too wide and too consistent to be accidental. This video is part of that ongoing project, so please subscribe if what you just watched did what it was supposed to do. Because you now know, and that changes something, not immediately, not in a straight line, but this is how it changes. One more person who understands the specific shape of a specific failure is one more person who can ask the specific question at the ballot box, at the council meeting, in the letters to an MP. Not a general complaint, the specific number, the specific year, the specific ruling, the specific 2.8%. Because this is your country. This is the police forces your taxes fund. This is your money paying for those 666,000 hours. The victims whose cases went unsolved paid for that too. They paid for a system that was stretched in every direction simultaneously and decided through the accumulated weight of guidance documents and recording frameworks and political pressure that some category of non-crime needed investigating, while the most serious crimes in the statute book did not. We're going to keep doing this. Every Home Office outcome table, every single Hansard transcript, every inspector's report published in a PDF that gets 2 days of news coverage and then disappears. This channel exists for the people who want to know the actual numbers rather than the press release, who fill the gap between what they are told and what they experience, and want someone to measure it precisely. You are those people. Share this specifically with one person who has given up on any of this mattering, because the first step towards something changing is enough people understanding exactly what needs to change and why. So send this to someone who thinks the police are doing their best with limited resources. They may be right about the best, but they may be wrong about the limit. The limit was not immovable. The 666,000 hours, they were a choice. The 2.8% is the consequence of that choice.